Hello everyone. Shall we talk about South Asian literature? South Asian literature looks like a simple topic, but no, it's very complex. It involves a lot of things. What is South Asian literature? As you may expect, it is the literature or literary traditions of the South Asian countries, that is, the countries of the Indian subcontinent. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal, and also South Asian literature is the literature of the South Asian diaspora, writers from these countries living in other Western countries. So, as you may expect, South Asian literature is written in many languages. We have South Asian literature in Tamil, written in the people of USA or UK or Malaysia, etc. It can be in Persian, it can be in Urdu, it can be in Hindi, it can be in Bengali, Sinhala, any, including English, of course. Even Sanskrit is there, I think. So, South Asian literature today talks about all these writers majorly writing in English or translated into English, many writing in their vernacular languages also. But that is in the contemporary times. South Asian literature as a term involves also the earliest literatures of these countries. Now, why are we even calling it South Asian literature? Why don't we just say literature or English literature? Because South Asian literature is a political term. It offers a certain perspective, an alternative perspective on universal issues. So, South Asian literature is like a counterfoil to Western literature, Western literary criticism and techniques. Now, when we talk about South Asia, we should also know that there is another term called Global South. Global South and Global North. That is also a political term. Global South is a term coined by the political activist Carl Oglesby. That was in 1969. And it is about the term involves the idea that the southern countries of the world are exploited and also misrepresented, politically dominated by the northern countries or the European countries and North American countries like USA and Canada. Okay, so it is not as simple as we thought. It is not just somebody writing in the southern part of the world. It is more than that, it's political. As we may expect, the beginnings of South Asian literature was oral. People were passing down generations orally stories and songs, and it is there in all our languages. In my language, Malayalam, we have, in Hindi we have, in all South Asian countries we have this. Many of us were dominated by Sanskrit literature. We understood Sanskrit as the sacred and greatest literature. Many of us had Tamil or Dravidian canons also. Tamil Sangam poetry was very brilliant. There was so much to it. Philosophical ideas were there. Aham and Puram. Literature was there. Epics were there. So it is in Persian and Urdu also. We have ghazals and masnavis and such great literature in all these languages. So South Asian literature is rich compared to Western literature, because Western literature usually they were migrant people. They had shorter histories. Our histories go back to centuries and thousands of years actually. Modern South Asian literature is, as any literature, related to print culture. Bhakti poetry, Sufi poetry, etc. have been printed, have been recorded, and today they are very fashionable and popular. Kabir Das, Surdas, Mirabai, just remembering the Bhakti poets, and the printing press, the magazines that it brought forth, the publishing companies, the newspapers, novels, all this added to the depiction of South Asian culture in literature. Obviously, if you look at India, for example, the beginnings of Indian literature in English is highly indebted to Western traditions. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, for example, who wrote Rajmohan's Wife, the first novel in English, immensely drew upon Western traditions of the novel. And also because of colonialism and British empire, South Asian literature was also inextricably linked to discussions of imperialism and nationhood. We wrote literature in order to give voice to our nation. Realism was largely the 19th and early 20th century technique that was employed, but later modernism, postmodernism, etc. entered South Asian literature also. And then after India and such countries got independence, there started anti-colonial migrations and diasporic writing, and all these intersected with new developments like petrofiction. In another video, I talk about it. So cultural studies also reforms and redefines South Asian literature. When we think about colonial and anti-colonial period, I cannot forget or fail to mention the spiritual strain in South Asian literature. People like Tagore. There were so many writers who depicted India through their spirituality. And also writers like Premchand or Mulk Raj Anand in India. And such writers are there in other countries also. They wrote about the underprivileged people, the downtrodden people, the Dalits. So resistance of all kinds towards oppressors from within the country as well as foreign oppressors, that goes hand in hand with South Asian literature. Progressive writers movement and such movements in India brought a lot of spirit of resistance into literature. Experimentation started because of this. When we talk about India, I cannot fail to mention partition narratives, and you can apply the theories of trauma there, the violence, the trauma, the displacement that partition brought. That is another important branch of Indian literature and South Asian literature. There are also very many feminist voices within South Asian literature, post-colonial feminists like Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak and others. So South Asian literature is a very rich field. Like in all the videos, I am also going to talk about the theories, not only the writers of literature, but also the theories. A very important basic theory that you can apply to South Asian literature, as I already mentioned, is post-colonialism. There are many writers like Mulk Raj Anand, or there are Kamala Das, Mahashweta Devi, Salman Rushdie, Amitav Ghosh, who employed very important post-colonial ideas related to language, related to identity, related to oppression and trauma in South Asian literature. And also a very strong strain of South Asian feminism. In India, we have Qurratullain Haidar, Begum Rokhaya, who wrote Sultana's Dream, or we have Ishmat Chugtai, who wrote Lihaf. Kamala Das I already mentioned, and contemporary writers like Jhumpa Lahiri or Kamila Shamsi, Pakistani writer. So Tahmima Anam, another important name. So these theories that we generally use to study literature are obviously applicable in South Asian context also. Theoretical ideas like Homi K. Bhabha's hybridity or mimicry or ambivalence, Edward Said's Orientalism, these are all very valuable ideas that provide insights into South Asian literature. Subaltern studies is there, Gayatri Spivak, Ranajit Guha, and others. Talking about subaltern studies, there is Partha Chatterjee, Deepesh Chakravarti, who wrote about nation and nationalism. That is a very important area. History from below, that is what they talked about. You know, nation is not only the power centers of the nation is also about the peasants, the workers, the silent margins, the tribals. How can you fail to mention the tribals and the voice that they have got from writers like Mahashweta Devi or theorists like G.N. Devi or Verrier Elwin, folkloristics and tribal literature. So these native writers talk about the tribals or vernacular writers. We can talk about something called vernacular modernity, which is different from Western modernity. Our concept of nationhood is different. It is not necessarily the Western concept of nationhood that emerges in South Asian literature. Let us take Benedict Anderson's idea of imagined communities, nations as imagined communities, or take the idea of provincializing Europe, where there is resistance, or as Ngugi wa Thiong'o said, the concept of decolonizing the mind. We have to get rid of Western ideas. We have to write back to the center, as Bill Ashcroft and others have talked about. There are versions of indigenous versions of feminism also that have emerged, intersecting with queer studies, disability studies. We have very strong feminists like Nivedita Menon or Susi Taru or K. Lalita or Azadi. That slogan. It's mind-boggling, the variety of writing that we have from South Asian feminism. South Asian feminism is very strong. And also caste, if you take India, Dalit literature has added a great, powerful dimension to South Asian studies, with writers like Sharan Kumar Limbale talking about an alternate aesthetics towards of Dalit aesthetics, talks about an alternate approach to literature from Dalit perspectives. So today, when we talk about South Asian studies, I cannot avoid thinking of that fabulous idea, that diverse idea, the idea that is so inclusive. What is that idea I'm talking about? World literature. World literature means texts that travel across boundaries, that texts that travel across limitations of nation, texts that give voice to everyone, including the subaltern, the voiceless margins. So, when you study world literature, you talk about something like polyglossia, many voicedness, multilingualism, beyond borders, and what really works here? What is that one thing that you need to understand literature from across the world? It is translation. Translation is not just word for word translation, it is transliteration, where translators are writers. They create a new text. The translated text is not an incomplete version of the original text. Translation is a new text altogether. It's a transcreation. And through translation, through rewriting original text, South Asian writers create a plethora of memory. South Asian literature is like a library of memory, of history, of trauma, of retellings, of identities, of remolding existing structures. It is stories. It is Margaret Atwood who once said, in the end, we all become stories. So, what a beautiful idea. And this is what South Asian literature shows us. South Asian nations, South Asia had nations that had histories wiped out because of colonialism. There was so much silencing and oppression of different kinds here. Now, through these retelling of stories, we are reinventing our identities. And when we talk about South Asian feminism, I can also tell you we have something called gendered modernities. Modernity of the man as different from modernity of the woman. A woman's modernity. This is so experimental. South Asian literature by definition is experimental. Everything is new. And environmental literature also intersects with South Asian literature. Environment also relates to the capital. It relates to globalization and the capital. Arjuna Padure has talked about disjuncture in the South Asian countries because of globalization. Disjuncture bringing 5 scapes: ethnoscape, mediascape, financescape, ideoscape, technoscape. So how are we redefining ourselves because of technology and globalization? How we become hybrid, our diasporas are hybrid. Isn't it ultimately so much relevant to talk about this? Because South Asian literature is about us. It is there in all the curricula. It is widely prescribed in all universities. And one more thing, guys, it is unethical to study English literature without studying South Asian literature, without studying our vernacular literatures, without studying about us. English literature is no longer about USA and UK. It is no longer about the native speakers of English. It is about us. I might write in Malayalam. That is also part of English literature. So beautiful, so beautiful. Oh, wow, isn't it? Right. So that is why I made this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I was able to give you some new insights and also some inspiration. Keep watching. These videos are, I believe, treasure, because I have put the treasure of my reading and learning. I made it for you. Because of you, I have learned all this. I have read and I have got enriched by it. What a treasure. I put it into these videos for you. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.